The chaos began with a single bark, sharp, urgent, and unlike anything passengers at Terminal C had heard before. It sliced through the hum of rolling suitcases and boarding announcements, turning heads and freezing steps. In the middle of the wide, sunlit airport floor, a K9 unit dog suddenly broke from his handler's grip and sprinted straight toward a woman pushing a stroller. What happened next unfolded so fast that only cameras slowed it down later. The dog leaped, teeth exposed not in anger but in warning, landing directly on the stroller as the woman screamed. And in that tense second, a small, unexpected object slipped out from beneath the baby's blanket and hit the ground, making officers rush from all directions. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of good intentions, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. The woman, Claire Harrison, had no idea her morning would turn into a scene that looked ripped from a dramatic movie. She had been traveling alone with her 3-month-old son, Oliver, who slept peacefully, wrapped in a colorful blanket covered in cartoon lions. Claire looked exhausted, her shoulders tight, her eyes swollen from nights of little sleep and months of unspoken fear. Everything about her posture suggested a woman carrying the weight of more than a diaper bag. Airport security had been nothing more than a blur to her. She was simply trying to find her gait, keep her baby calm, and avoid breaking down in public. But fate had other plans, and those plans had 4 legs, sharp instincts, and a black vest labeled K9 unit. The dog's name was Rex, a German shepherd known throughout the precinct not only for his unmatched detection skills but for something deeper, an ability to sense distress, danger, and the things humans tried their best to hide. His handler, Officer Brooks, had worked with him for 3 years and trusted him more than anyone on the team. But even Brooks had never seen Rex react like this. One moment, Rex was scanning luggage, the next, he was straining against his leash with a force that made Brooks stumble before the dog broke free entirely. Claire had barely taken 2 steps when Rex launched himself forward. She screamed, clutching the stroller handles, her voice echoing in the terminal as nearby passengers backed away. Rex didn't bark in aggression, there was urgency, confusion, and something like fear in the sound. When he landed on the stroller, paws firmly planted on the frame, the blanket shifted and something small, hard, and metallic slipped out, hitting the polished floor with a sound that immediately hardened every officer's expression. Officers ran from every corner, boots striking the floor as passengers gasped, whispered, and filmed from behind columns and chairs. Claire felt her legs weaken, her breath vanish. She didn't know what had fallen out or why the police were suddenly shouting commands. All she knew was that her baby was beneath that dog, and she needed him safe. But what the officers saw made them stop, not in panic, but in shock. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't anything dangerous at all. It was a small, silver medical alert device, one used for infants with breathing complications, a device that was supposed to be clipped to Oliver's blanket to monitor his oxygen levels. But it had been malfunctioning for weeks. Claire had taped it in place earlier that morning, desperate not to lose it, because she couldn't afford a replacement. And when it slipped out, Rex's instincts kicked in, not to attack, but to save. Because the moment the device hit the ground, it let out a weak, barely audible warning chirp, the sign of an infant's oxygen dropping. Oliver was struggling to breathe. The baby's tiny chest had begun to rise unevenly, so subtle that Claire, consumed by the hectic rush of catching her flight, hadn't noticed. But Rex had. The dog's senses picked up the faintest change in the child's breathing rhythm, the shift in scent that humans could never detect. He hadn't leaped in aggression, he'd leaped to protect. As officers skidded to a halt and Brooks reached Rex, the dog refused to move. He positioned himself above Oliver, nudging the blanket aside with careful precision, whining softly as the baby's lips showed the slightest tint of blue. Claire's scream broke into a sob when she saw it. Panic rippled through the officers as one radioed for medical support, another checked the device, and Brooks gently guided Rex aside so paramedics could reach the child. Claire collapsed to her knees, her hands trembling as she touched her son's cheeks, whispering apologies through tears she could no longer hold back. She had been doing everything alone for so long, too long, and the exhaustion had finally caught up to her in the cruelest way. As paramedics worked quickly, Rex sat beside Claire, head lowered, eyes fixed on the baby with protective intensity. Brooks knelt beside them and explained quietly that Rex had reacted to distress, not threat. Claire's guilt tightened every muscle in her body. She hadn't wanted to cause trouble. She hadn't expected help. She had simply hoped to get through one more day without falling apart. But life had pushed her beyond her limits. Oliver stabilized after a few minutes. The paramedics assured Claire that the baby was going to be okay but needed monitoring and likely an immediate hospital visit. The medical alert device had been failing, giving readings only when jolted. Without Rex's intervention, they said, Claire might not have noticed until it was too late. The thought nearly shattered her. The officers escorted Claire to a quiet office away from the crowd. She sat there, rocking Oliver gently while tears streamed down her cheeks. She didn't cry from fear anymore, she cried from relief, from the terrifying realization of what almost happened, and from the kindness of a dog who owed her nothing yet gave everything. Rex sat by the door, waiting patiently, tail thumping softly whenever Oliver let out even the smallest sound. Brooks explained that Rex had a history of picking up medical emergencies even when he wasn't trained for them. He'd once stopped a man from collapsing, and months earlier, he detected a child's undiagnosed seizure condition at a school demonstration. Claire listened, overwhelmed. Her voice came out quiet, raw, and shaky as she finally shared her truth. She was a single mother. Oliver had been born with complications that kept them in the hospital for weeks. The medical bills were still haunting her. The baby's father wasn't in the picture. She had lost her job during pregnancy. And today's flight was supposed to take her to a relative who offered her a place to stay until she could rebuild her life. She hadn't slept properly in months. She couldn't afford a new medical monitor. She didn't know how to ask for help anymore. And today, she nearly paid the price for trying to carry everything alone. The officers listened with empathy instead of judgment. Brooks, moved by her courage and exhaustion, asked if she needed anything. That question, simple, sincere, made Claire break down again. She wasn't used to kindness. She wasn't used to people caring. While Claire fed Oliver and regained her strength, the officers began talking quietly among themselves. Before the hour ended, something incredible happened. The airport police, the K-9 unit, and even staff who had witnessed the scene began pooling together support for Claire. Within a short time, they had arranged transport to a nearby hospital, contacted her relative to explain everything, and even started discussing resources and donations to help her get the baby equipment she couldn't afford. But the most touching moment came when Rex walked back to Claire and gently rested his head on her knee. The dog who had leaped with fierce determination now approached her with quiet gentleness, as if assuring her that she wasn't alone, not anymore, not on his watch. Claire reached down and stroked Rex's fur, her touch soft but trembling with gratitude. She whispered thank you over and over, tears soaking her face as she finally allowed herself to accept the help fate had sent her in the form of a courageous K-9 hero. As they prepared to escort Claire to the ambulance, Brooks asked if she wanted Rex to walk beside her. Claire nodded, and the moment became one of the most captured, Richard, and heartwarming scenes in airport security history, a weary mother pushing a stroller, a group of officers surrounding her with support, and a noble German shepherd walking proudly beside her like a guardian. Before leaving, Claire looked back at the officers and passengers who had gathered. For the first time in months, she felt something return, a fragile, glowing ember she thought she had lost forever. Hope. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories of compassion and courage reach others who need to hear them. Before the final message, here is your special request line. Speech balloon, tell us in the comments, what do you think Rex sensed first, fear, danger, or pure instinct to protect? Claire never forgot that day. Neither did the officers. And Rex became more than a hero, he became a symbol of the unseen ways kindness finds us exactly when we're falling apart. In the weeks that followed, the department and community came together to support Claire and Oliver. Donations provided them with a safe place to stay, reliable medical equipment, and the reassurance that even in the darkest moments, strangers can become lifelines. And Rex. He visited Oliver several times, each time nudging his small foot with a gentle nose, as if checking that the child was still safe, still breathing, still surrounded by love. For Claire, that dog wasn't just a lifesaver, he was proof that miracles don't always fall from the sky. Sometimes they run toward you on four paws, barking just in time.